Thank you very much. His Eminence, Chair National Imam, His Excellency the Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the President of Islamic University College, Ghana. It's a duty for me to be here today, and also a privilege to be invited to be part of this occasion. When news came on Friday that Israel has started its bombing campaign against Iran, I had a certain feeling that was clearly visible even in my daughters, who asked me, "You're looking sad." She told me, "You're looking sad. What is making you sad?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you tomorrow." But she insisted. But I still said to her that you wait until tomorrow. So when everybody retreated to bed, I kept my phone beside me. And what I realized was that all the platforms, the social media platforms to which I belong, they were all silent. And that was a certain message, that there was a certain collective sorrow among people across the entire spectrum who were not necessarily political, not necessarily religious, but there was something of sorrow that united everybody. Until the following morning, after Fajr prayers, and the president of Islamic University College is here, he posted the first glimpses of information on the Ansar Allah platform. And that was what gave hope. And I immediately shared it on all the platforms that I belong to, and all the platforms came to life. Everybody now started responding, MashaAllah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So it made me to think. Just a while ago, some of the presenters who came before me indicated that there was a certain level of either complacency or despondency among the Muslim women. I think that we should not generalize it. Just pause for a moment. If the Islamic Revolution had not happened in 1979 in Iran, where would the Muslim Ummah have been? So some Muslims had taken the lead much earlier in trying to provide the leadership that will restore the Ummah to its former glory. Of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran could have just stayed as it is, also advertised its country as a tourist attraction, built skyscrapers. Its leaders could have been buying yachts and then designer private planes, but they chose a different path. If that had been the case, Astaghfirullah, today Al-Aqsa Mosque probably would not have been standing. Because the Zionists had an original plan to demolish it, even by using subterfuge. Just about 10-15 years ago, they started what they call archaeological excavations under the mosque so that it would weaken the foundations and cause it to collapse. So today, what is keeping the struggle against Zionism and raising the profile of the Ummah has to be traced to the Islamic Revolution in 1979 and the leadership that the Islamic Republic of Iran, under the leadership of Ayatollah Khamenei, is providing. I also listened to some his speeches, especially when he made reference to the attempts to assassinate him. He spoke like someone with the highest level of Iman. His life doesn't matter. He even made reference to the fact that he has a disabled body. When he reached out, I shed a tear or two, looked at him, looked at the nation that he represents, and the sacrifices they are making, just because it's a call to duty. It's a religious obligation. Otherwise, they could easily have gone the way others have gone and struck a deal with the Anglo-Zionists, and they would have had their peace. But today they are making tremendous sacrifices, and the Ummah would have to thank Allah for giving us the Islamic Republic of Iran. Otherwise, our plight may have been irreparably, damaged as we speak today. Fortunately, after the revolution, Iran has been preparing for this moment. What am I talking about? First, to protect its sovereignty and also to liberate Palestine. And there was one political figure in the past who said that there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. In the past 2 or 3 weeks, we have seen dramatic changes in the trajectory the world is going, especially as it affects the Muslim Ummah. Of course, when it comes to Palestine, we've seen that dialogue with Palestine has been going on for 75 good years. And Gaza is still burning. So, the Islamic Republic of Iran has now decided that it's time to try other methods. And it has been patient for a very long time. And that patience is described as strategic patience, which the Anglo-Zionist Empire has misconstrued as weakness, or used to misconstrue as weakness until now. So America has threatened, it has sanctioned, it has placed missiles around Iran, it has placed bombers, but still it could not break the spirit of the Iranian people. Iran refused to bow. It may bleed, of course, but it will not break. And we're seeing evidence to that effect now. I just want to touch a little bit on the double standards and the hypocrisy of the Anglo-Zionist Empire. You take a look at the maps, the American military bases around the world, and let's look at where Iran is and see the number of military bases that are dotted around Iran. For what reason? Just wanted to position themselves within easy striking distance to Iran. For what reason? There was somebody who cynically joked that it is Iran's fault for placing its country in the middle of American bases. Now, apart from that, we've seen that it's gone just beyond trying to intimidate Iran. It has carried out direct acts of aggression by murdering its scientists, its military generals, and it's not only that, not only murdering its military generals and then scientists, it has also armed Israel to burn Gaza and then continue on its genocidal campaign against the people of Palestine. It has armed Israel to continue occupying Muslim lands. And now we're talking about the JCPOA, which is otherwise known as the Iran nuclear deal. If a nation's right to exist depends on surrendering its defenses, as I would call him a lunatic, because if we look at Donald Trump, there's everything about him that indicates that he needs psychiatric attention. And there's even a certain movement now in the United States of America that is trying to legislate that any presidential hopeful would have to take a mandatory psychiatric evaluation of his condition before he can be allowed to contest. So, after jettisoning the first agreement, he now brings a second one, which virtually wants Iran to capitulate and then surrender its defenses. That's not a treaty. That's not a pact for peace. It's a chain, it's a leash with which you want to control. But Iran has responded to the collective happiness and joy of the vast majority of the world, especially the Muslim Ummah. Iran has proven to us that this is not a world where good, would win by just moral example. You only use the moral argument when you are dealing with somebody who also respects morals. Iran has demonstrated to us that the era of polite resistance has come to an end. And that the oppressed must stop asking for permission from his oppressor. You don't stop a predator. Israel called its last program using the metaphor of a lioness, which is a predator. You don't stop a predator by just asking it to reconsider its position. What you do is you stop it by making the cost of the next strike unbearable. And that's exactly what Iran has done with its retaliatory strikes. So now we've seen that Iran has established itself as the standard bearer of the struggle of the world's oppressed majority, not only of Muslims, but especially so of the Palestinian people, who have been suffering under the yoke of Zionist oppression. And this is manifested in the settler colonial outpost. For Israel, it's not a state. It's not a state. It's a settler colonial outpost. And Iran is defending a people whose land has been stolen since 1948. That settler colonial outpost is established on the land that was stolen in 1948, and Iran is defending the owners of that land. But you look at the other side, those who are enabling the Zionist, aggression and the Zionist, genocide against the Palestinian people. This is a thief who has stolen land, but he's been honored He's been applauded and even given a seat at the United Nations, while the rightful owners of the land live under siege, airstrikes, checkpoints, snipers, blockades, home demolitions, and military occupation, and now deliberate starvation to cause another Nakba. And while this is going on, the victims are branded as terrorists. Why? Because they refuse to die. And all this, as I said, is happening with the complicity of the collective West. And we should not be surprised, because the West recognizes itself in Zionism. In other words, Zionism is in the West's own DNA. It's embedded in the DNA of Zionism. First, it was midwifed by Great Britain in the so-called Balfour Declaration, bankrolled and still bankrolled by the United States of America, and now sanctified by Europe. And these same genocidal Western powers that carried out the genocidal extermination, as my colleague Eleon Kwesi mentioned, these are the same people. As I said, the Zionism is embedded in their DNA, because their beginnings, the genocidal extermination of the indigenous populations of America, Canada, and Australia. These were the same people who inflicted the transatlantic slave trade on Africa. Let's not forget that. And take, history is not just isolated, incidents and episodes. We have to link them in order to have a more comprehensive understanding of how imperialism works. They were the same class of people who inflicted the transatlantic slave trade on Africa and continued it for 400 years, after which they instituted direct colonialism for several centuries. These are the same people who armed apartheid South Africa. These are the same people who dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then they turn around and lecture us on civilization and rules-based, so-called rules-based international order. So Iran is leading the rest of the world in resisting this hypocrisy. And this is what has made Iran the most loved nation on earth at the moment as we speak. Just look around at, forget about the so-called mainstream media, the legacy media. Look at the popular media and then the social media and see the amount of sympathy that Iran's actions are generating among the moral majority of the world. Why? Because behind Iran stands a world that remembers colonialism, a world that remembers imperialist aggression and oppression, not as history, but as a lived reality. And these are the people who constitute the moral majority of the world. So today we are witnessing, the world is witnessing a seismic change, and Iran is leading the way. And its actions today teach us many lessons, one of which is the time for polite protest is over. The Palestinian Authority should take a lesson from this. The time for begging for recognition is over. The silence of those who are begging for recognition only encourages the Anglo-Zionist empire. And what those who are asking for recognition should remember is that peace doesn't come when the oppressed shake hands with power. It only comes when power can no longer crush resistance. Finally, before I take my seat, I just want to make one grave miscalculation from the Anglo-Zionist Empire, especially with regard to Iran. They think, and with specific reference to what is happening in the last couple of weeks, the West thinks that they are fighting the Iranian government. They think that they are fighting a government. In fact, they are fighting a civilization. They are fighting a people who have their roots in struggle, in resistance, in martyrdom, and the strength of their faith alone is more formidable than the B-2 bombers that they sent to go and then attempt to destroy the nuclear facilities. What they forget is that Iran is a civilization that is older than their national flags. They had planned a victory parade. But as they were planning, Allah too was planning, and Allah is the best of planners. Their planning turned into the fact that they were digging their own graves. In real time, they are watching how the world is reordering itself without them. Just a few decades ago, they were sanctioning countries that supplied weapons to Iran. Today, they are sanctioning countries that want to buy weapons from Iran. This is the dynamics, or these are the dynamics of the world and the role that Iran is playing in dramatically changing the picture. And let us also remember, this is not just about Iran. This is about every colonized people, every colonized nation, anyone or any people who have ever suffered colonial oppression and imperialist domination. The nations that remember the cost of submission. This is about a future to be changed, a refusal to allow our future to be dictated by the chains of the past. And Burkina Faso, I just want to make a direct abrupt link about the lesson about the Iranian experience, how it's the contagion, how it is spreading slowly, but the need to resist. Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, they have taken a page from the Iranian script. And what is it? That real change begins when obedience ends. When you refuse to obey your oppressor, then that is the beginning of change. When the oppressed people decide that no more, we will not ask for permission from our oppressor in order to breathe. We will not ask for your permission. Imperialism calls this destabilization of the rules-based international order. But we have a different name for it. We call it justice. A justice that is finding its voice. And I'll not do the justice to this topic if I don't make my final concluding remarks by making reference to we've all heard of the axis of resistance, but let us also remember that there is also an axis of assistance. It is clear that now The battle lines have been drawn for the Arab and the Muslim world, as well as the entire international community. On the one hand, we have the axis of resistance comprising Palestine, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the resistance in Iraq, who have made and continue to make great sacrifices in their support of the Palestinian cause. Then there is also the axis of assistance, consisting of the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. When you read about the treachery as the genocide was going on, some of these countries had business relations with Israel. Turkey was still supplying oil from Azerbaijan to Israel and had business relationship with it and refused to terminate those relations even at the height of the genocide, and even make supplies to the Israeli military in terms of uniform and military gear. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and even Qatar have investments in the Israeli military-industrial complex. So some of the weapons that are used to kill Palestinians have money invested in them coming from so-called Muslim countries. Anyway, so when the dust finally settles on the Zionist colonial settler regime of Israel, just like it did on apartheid South Africa, future generations would look back and wonder how humanity could have allowed such a monstrosity to happen. And the most damning verdict, however, would be pronounced on that part of the Arab and Muslim world who remained silent while the Zionist and racist settler colonial regime of Israel went on its genocidal rampage against the Palestinian people. And those among them who committed the treachery by aiding and abetting the industrial slaughter of their Arab brethren and co-religionists. And this is in spite of the fact that the faith that they and all of us profess, as an earlier speaker said, teaches us that whenever or whoever amongst us sees an evil, he must change it with a hand. If he's not able to do so, then with his tongue. And if he's not able to do so, then with his heart. And that is the weakest form of faith. Let us judge the actions of the Muslim Ummah by these criteria. And luckily, things are changing. The trajectory is changing. What happened just in the past 2 weeks, and what is even just happening now as we speak. Before I came up the rostrum, I saw some text messages. Very heartwarming. How the dynamics are changing. Even within the United States, there's still a moral segment of the population that went on a massive demonstration as early as this morning, saying that they don't want any war with the Islamic Republic of Iran. That is enough is enough. Okay, on this note, I would like to take my seat and then to thank the organizers of this this forum for giving the opportunity for us to share these views. In actual fact, your earlier comment about that we should write, we actually write. The problem is the Israeli presence in Ghana here is also very strong, especially in the last regime. It took a lot of effort to get an article that was just bringing the Palestine side of the story published in the main newspaper. I mean, the Daily Graphic. The last one I wrote, I had to look for some people who had business connections with Graphic, who incidentally are Muslims, to intervene to have that published. Just take a look at the article. There's nothing, just telling the truth as it is, the nature, as it is. And just a couple of months ago, we also published a small booklet, The Israeli Genocide in Gaza, a short guide to the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict. We're in the process of updating it in light of these new developments, and with the help of the president of the Islamic University College, it will soon come out, and we'll spread it as widely as possible. It's written in a language that is easily understandable. It is short. You don't need any serious intellectual effort to digest it. Inshallah, with the help of those who matter in this, the booklet will come out very soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.